Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel where we discuss all things about Skullgirls Mobile. So this is part 3 of the mini-series on move stats. If you haven't watched part 1 and 2 yet, please do so as they cover a good basic understanding on how moves work in this game. For this part 3, we will cover defensive stats and which stats are important for your defensive fighters. As a reminder, I will be using these terms which I spoke about in part 1 of the video, so please do make sure that you watch that beforehand if you don't know what they mean. Previously, I recommend upgrading offensive moves first as they can be used across different variants of the same fighter and has a greater payoff for their investment. Investing in defense is generally more expensive and more geared towards late game because you will have to tailor a set of 5 moves for a single variant. If you're trying to build a defensive team for 3 Robo Fortunes, for example, you will have to build and upgrade 5 different moves for each of those variants, bringing the total number of moves to 15, which is very expensive to do. But before we get to that, let's talk about the defensive stats. As a reminder, here's an image of all the stats at their maximum cap. So for defense, we're primarily more concerned with the stats on the right, which includes HP, defense, resistance, and meter gain. These 4 stats are pretty much the best stats you would want in your defensive fighters for reasons that I will explain in just a moment. First of all is the HP stat. Like the attack stat, the HP stat has no limit and you can go as high as you possibly can with your moves. It is also the best stat to have for defense, and again, like the attack stat, there are 2 ways to increase them. Either through a flat HP point or through a HP percentage increase. Out of these 2, you'd want the HP percentage and never the flat HP point, as it does not scale into late game. As a reminder, in this game we have tiers with different base stats. A bronze fighter HP caps at around 3700, and an increase through flat HP point could be big. But when you evolve your fighters to diamond tier, you're talking about HP stats in the 10,000s, like 40,000 and 30,000. Even the fighter with the lowest HP sits at 22,000 HP points when they are evolved to diamond. So you'd want to scale your HP through percentage instead of flat points instead. Personally, I would want an HP percentage in all of my defensive movesets, and I would immediately sell any moves that has no HP percentage, even if they have other useful stats that we'll go over in a bit. HP has no cap, so the more HP you have, the more damage you'll be able to tank. But this is also entwined with the next stat that is very important to have, defense. The defense stat maxes out at 50%, and you'd always want to max out the stat to reduce any incoming damage. Any move with HP percentage and defense is automatically a 2-3 and would be a great move to keep. The next stat is resistance, and this is also very important to give your defensive fighters the ability to resist debuffs coming their way. For defensive fighters, resistance is super useful because modifiers from prize fights and catalysts in rift battles often grant your defense certain buffs that will allow them to survive longer in a fight. Debuffs such as Curse is a very prominent counter to this, and being able to resist these debuffs will make your defensive fighters much harder to take down. Similar to defense, the stat caps at 50%, so it wouldn't completely nullify any debuff, but makes those odds better in your favor. Finally, the next stat you want is meter gain. Now, meter gain is also super crucial for defensive fighters. Think about the many times that you have been hit by an unblockable blockbuster in prize fights and your streak ends just like that. Meter gain allows your defensive fighters to charge their blockbusters faster when they are hit. With a high meter gain, you are putting the opponent at risk at activating an unblockable blockbuster, which usually will always kill off the opponent when it does go off. I would say a good number to aim for meter gain is about 50%, but a bit more is usually fine as long as your defense fighter has enough HP, defense, and resistance already. Okay, now that the big 4 is out of the way, it's time to talk about the other stats which are more niche and usually unwanted. First up is block proficiency, which reduces the amount of damage you get while blocking. It's often rare that your defensive fighter actually cares about block proficiency, With enough HP, defense, and modifiers from prize fights and Rift Catalyst, your fighters will often be tanky enough to survive even normal hits. Blocked hits will often deal very little and insignificant damage, so this stat is pretty much a dead stat on defenders. It has very low impact and you'll never really care about block damage ever. Then we have crit resist. It's very rare for a strategy to rely completely on critical hits, so reducing the opponent's critical hit rate usually doesn't really do anything, and if you really want to do it, you can always use That's All Folks, which automatically reduces the opponent's crit rate by 75% as long as she's alive, while also being a pretty good defender overall with her evasion stacks. Lastly, we have tag cooldown, which honestly is just not great due to the AI's unpredictability. You have no control when the AI is going to tag out, so investing in a stat that reduces that cooldown just doesn't make sense because they might not ever tag out. So just to recap, the big four are really the defensive stats that you should aim for. A move that has 3 of the 4 defensive stats should be a definite keep. The rest aren't that helpful, and remember that there are catalysts and modifiers that will help to make your defenders even more tough to break through. Just having a plain HP defense resistance is more than enough. Okay, so here's a little quiz. In here there's 4 moves and I want you to tell me whether or not these moves are worth keeping or buying. If you want to participate in this little activity, then feel free to pause here before I discuss each of them. 1, 2, 3. Okay, last warning. I'm going to talk about them now. First, we have Gravity Slingshot, one of Annie's blockbuster with HP percentage, defense, and resistance. These are 3 really good stats and is a very good move to have. I would definitely buy this move and upgrade it to at least level 12. This is an amazing 3-3 move for defenders and you should be super happy if you ever find a move with these stats alone. Next we have Valentine's Burst move with HP percentage, attack percentage, and element penalty. Personally, I am not a fan of this move. Attack percentage is fine to have, but you really want defensive stats more. Element penalty really sucks here, and if this stat was defense or resistance instead, I might have reconsidered, but it is on a burst move, which is super important for defenders. But for me, I would probably keep this move, but I wouldn't upgrade it past level 6. If I see it in the shop, I probably won't buy it, but if I got it from dailies, I'll keep it for now, and once a better move rolls along, I would immediately sell this. Third, we have Drillation, which is a Fuqua special with HP percentage, defense percentage, and crit rate. So this move is a 2-3 because we really want that HP and defense, but crit rate doesn't really do any good here. I would probably buy it and level it up till level 9 or 12 and see how it rolls. It is a 2-3 moves and it is worth a gamble. If it rolls too much into crit rate, then I will stop and immediately sell it. This isn't an ideal move, but the fact that it's very difficult to get a 3-3 move means it's good enough to keep for now and definitely worth the gamble. Lastly, Lubs of Love, another Fuqua special move with HP percentage, attack percentage, and resistance. This to me is a great move to keep, and it's much better than the previous one. Ideally, you'd probably want meter gain over attack percentage, but this is still very good. Having an attack percentage stat isn't as detrimental as crit rate because at least it can still be used to deal some extra bit of damage to the opponent. Just make sure it doesn't roll too much into attack percentage. You'd still want to have HP percentage and resistance as the priority. Furthermore, if you read the effect down below, it is also an unblockable special move, which is crazy good. But if we're talking about stats alone, I will definitely keep and upgrade this move. The next part I want to talk about are move choices for your defenders. It's important to understand how the AI behaves and use moves that the AI can easily use. As you get in higher streaks in prize fights or fight tougher bases in rift battles, the AI will be more ruthless than ever. They will use their special moves and blockbusters regardless if you're blocking. Importantly, the AI will use their tier 3 unblockable blockbuster if you block their attack. The only way to avoid this is to either move back quickly before any hit lands, or intercept very well before they can land a hit on you. As a defender, we have to maximize this chance as much as possible. There are 4 types of moves that I personally think are the best to equip for a defender. First up is the unblockable blockbuster, which is the deadliest part of any defender. This is pretty self-explanatory, so I won't expand on it too much, but when it does go off, it will usually secure a kill, and especially if you're in Rift or a high streak prize fight with stat bonuses. The second important move type are Burst, which are special moves that can interrupt combos. Every character has these moves and they are very annoying to face against. Mind you, the opponent can use a burst followed by an unblockable blockbuster because that burst counts as a hit by the opponent. Bursts are very important, and if it's possible, just equip as much burst as you have to annoy the hell out of the opponent. The third move type are command grab moves, which are moves that your opponent won't be able to block. These moves bypasses blocking, and if it connects, it will always deal damage. Example of such moves are blockbusters such as Lupin Pummel and Inevitable Snuggle, but also special moves such as Mortuary Drop, Wolf Shoots, and Merry Gorillas. The fourth type of moves are projectiles, which are special moves or blockbusters that can hit you from afar. This is mostly good because if your opponent is at the other corner of the stage and your defender uses a projectile, the opponent will most likely block, and that could potentially trigger an unblockable blockbuster to their face. Special move projectiles are much more preferred because they don't require meter and the AI can use it anytime they want. So we now have reached the end. Hopefully this has been useful for those of you who are new and can't really get their head around all these stats. Regardless, if you are in doubt, it's better to keep the move and ask people rather than selling it and regretting it later on. Again, this is quite a difficult topic to cover because everyone has different opinions, but I hope this has been useful to consolidate your own opinions on which stat to keep and which stat to sell. Okay, so that's all for me now. If you're new to the channel, be sure to give a like and subscribe to hear more guides like this. I also have a Discord channel now, so feel free to join and hang out. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.